Morning, and welcome to our Tuesday, Topical Tuesday webinar. I'm David Orr. I'm the director here at the New York LTAP of the Cornell Local Roads Program, and today we're going to be talking about flagging. Now, there's lots of good resources out there for flagging, and what I really want to start today in this weird world of Zoom is a conversation, which is going to be a bit odd, but we'll make it work. To do that, you're going to need to open up your Q&A panel. And down near the bottom, you'll find a bar. There's a Q&A panel down there. Open that up, and I want you to put questions in as we go. And Adam and Amanda, who are behind the scenes, and Nick here at the lab where we are, who's also behind the scenes, will make sure I get your questions on a reasonable basis. So I want you to put them in as we go. But I'm going to also give you some resources. Those resources will actually be put in via the chat pod. So you're going to want to open that up as well. And open up the chat pod. And before we get started too far, Adam, did you load up the preview questions? I forgot to ask.
Yes, I can put them out there now.
Here. So go ahead and put those in. And there's 3 questions in there. First question is going to be who you work for, right? Got that one right, Nick? First one? Yeah. Let's see what we got here. Who they work for. Okay, what are the results there? Adam?
Yep, I'm just getting them there. We've got about 7% highway workers, 20% are supervisors and superintendents, 7% we have an engineer with us, and then 67% other.
Other. Okay, I like other. Okay, second question. Is that the how long they've worked there?
It is who do you work for? Village, town, county?
Okay. Yep.
City, state, or private sector.
Trying to do it from memory here. We'll give folks a second for that one. We got a whole bunch of props just off screen. That'll be fun. Okay. What do we got there, Adam?
Okay, we've got 7% village, 29% or 4 people are with the town, 29% or 4 people are with counties, 1 person with the city, and 4 with the state.
Okay, cool. Okay, so get a good variety of folks. That'll give us some good questions too as we talk about some of these things. Okay, and the last one is, if I've gotten them right, is how long they've worked there.
So that is correct.
Get my liquid, which we'll actually talk about this. This is actually a part of flagging. We'll talk about that later. Okay, what do we got, Adam?
Okay, we have 2 people or 13% have been there less than a year, 19% or 3 people from 1 to 5 years, 4 people or 25% from 5 to 10 years, 2 people or 13% from 10 to 20 years, and 5 people or 31%, the most, have been there over 20 years.
Wow, quite a variety, Okay, well, my goal today is simple. For those of you who have got a lot of experience, if I can give you 1 or 2 things that you pick up you didn't know, I've had a great day. For those of you less than that, trying to give you some ideas and thoughts on how you can make both yourself and your own department better flaggers. That's my goal. So really want to make you better flaggers and understand. And part of that issue with flagging is understanding the role of a flagger and the role of flagger within the work zone operations themselves, because we know that's pretty important. In the United States, in an average year, about 20 flaggers are killed. I hate to say this. In New York State a few years ago, we actually had 4 flaggers lost in 1 year. And 3 of the 4 were lost because they made a critical mistake, which comes back to the picture I promised I would talk about. In the advertisement, we put a picture and we had a flagger who was standing right along the center line. Is that a good place for a flagger to stand? Put that in the Q&A for me. Tell me if you think that's a good idea. See if anybody finds the Q&A for me there, Adam.
Yep, I've got my eye on it right now.
I'm also just checking to see how folks do with the Q&A. Anybody answer that one yet, Adam?
We just have a few just now coming in, and it's a resounding no.
Resounding no. So it's the probably one of the things we see way too often. In fact, I'd say it's the single most common thing I see where flaggers want to stand that just makes me really nervous. And the reason for that is fairly simple. If you're hit by a vehicle, a car, not a truck, which is even worse, a car, and they hit you at 20 miles an hour or less, your chances of walking away with just a minor injury or just a scratch, pretty significant, 90% plus. But you get hit 40 miles an hour and your chances of walking away are less than 10%. 90% of the people who are hit at that speed are going to have a serious long-term catastrophic injury or they're going to be killed. So remember, the primary goal of a flagger is to be someone who helps protect folks. And the first person you have to protect is yourself. If you aren't protecting yourself, you can't protect the next group you're trying to protect, which is the crew. You're really trying to protect the crew, the folks around you. You're their primary person to get traffic to behave the way you want them to behave. Then you're protecting the public, of course, and to some extent, you're protecting the work site by getting people to go in the right place and not cause other damage, okay? Now, to do that, you've got functions that you've got to have. The primary function, of course, is to act as a guide, moving people through and around a work zone. But you're also, as I said, you're protecting folks, and that's a primary key issue. To do that, you also want to try to avoid delay to some extent, though that's not always possible, so don't go crazy. And I'll talk a little bit about in our hour times you might be able to provide some answers to questions, Q&A. Now, I do have a question for you. And again, put this in the Q&A and we'll see what answers you've got. One of the reasons we talk about primarily protecting yourself and the crew is you're not inside a vehicle. And that steel around you does actually do some protection. And if we can get people to slow down, everybody can walk away and go home. What happens when you're in an urban area? And we do have us all some village and city folks here. What happens if you have bicycles and pedestrians? Where do you put them in the relationship? As a flagger, you see bicyclist and or pedestrian in an urban setting. Where do you put them in terms of priority? What do you think? Nothing yet?
Nothing yet. I've got the Q&A open.
Got the Q&A open. Let's see if anybody have, where would I put pedestrians and bicycles? We got an answer.
Yep. First, same as vehicular traffic, same as the vehicles, pedestrian first, bike, then car. And those are the three that have come in so far.
Well, again, think about it from the standpoint of the risk of them getting hurt or injured. So yourself is always first. The crew, especially the crew outside the equipment, would probably still be second. But those bicycles and pedestrians tend to be vulnerable populations. So you're probably going to put them first before you would a car or truck or other vehicles like that, because they are more vulnerable. So keep that in mind as you're acting as a flagger, where you're going to put everybody. Now, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is in our Flagger Pocket Guide. You can download that pocket guide from our website, and it's magically going to show up in the chat pod right now with the link to that. So you can download the Flagger Handbook, but better yet, you can get copies of it. If you'd like copies of this handbook or our Work Zone Pocket Guide, please feel free to email us at the end of this, and our email will show up here at the end of this session, or just send it to our website, and we'll send you as many of these as you want. The price is right. You just need to let us know the address we can send it to. If you're already in our database, make sure you at least put the organization and who we should mail these things to. So what I want to do now is talk a little bit about all the equipment. I got a whole bunch of stuff scattered, most of it's off screen, but I want to talk about the equipment that a flagger needs. Okay. Now, when it comes to overall equipment, obviously, one of the first things we like to talk about is the vest. Okay. So to start with, this vest right here, you may have seen vests like this. Okay. What's wrong with this vest? Give you a second. What's wrong with this vest? I'll even put it on to help you illustrate what's wrong with this vest. There's several things about this vest. Not the least of which is, I think the Velcro is broken, but I'll temporarily do that, just pretend. Assuming the Velcro wasn't broken, what's wrong with this vest? Here's your hint. Anybody answer that one yet, Nick? Nobody answered? We don't allow vests like this for a variety of reasons.
Not ANSI 2.
It's not the proper level. ANSI level
And-
2, you'll hear about. The big key is you want that side panel because you want to be able to see the person completely around. The second problem is it probably doesn't have enough retroreflective material. Yeah, it's lightweight, but can you really be seen? They do make mesh versions that meet the spec, but the problem is you want to be able to be seen. So better is a vest. This happens to be one that's not mesh, it's cloth. I like it because it's got pockets, but that's just me. It's got a side panel, I can see it, okay? And that's pretty important. So this is the minimum that you'd want to have. You'd want to have a vest that has both sides, that has retroreflective stripes, okay? So that's the first thing, you need a good vest. You need a hard hat or some kind of hat. Now, not every agency requires a hard hat. I will be honest with you. I will tell you right now, if you are on a site where there's construction going on and people are moving with trucks, stone or asphalt or anything could fly off that truck, I actually recommend the hard hat. I think that's pretty important. But I do know agencies that don't require a hard hat, but you still want a hat on of some type. Hats are pretty important. And I'm not just talking a baseball cap. That's not the only thing. You could use a baseball cap, okay? You could also use, and I've seen this with flaggers, you could use a full brimmed hat, okay? You could even use a full brim hard hat. One advantage of a full brimmed hard hat, that's you don't think about too much until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then your brain remembers, oh, I forgot my sunscreen. The full brimmed hat can actually protect the back of your neck. But generally, we actually recommend most of the time a hard hat. A hard hat does obviously protect you from rocks and stones and anything that might get thrown up. But it has a secondary value, and that is it's a communication tool. And we'll talk about the communication tool a little bit as we go through the course of the day. Now, the vest I've got here is an orange one. Okay, it's got the side panels, but one alternative is you could do it a different color. So I got my other set here.
David, we have a question that came in.
Sure. Go for it.
Is color an issue with hard hats?
Hard hats for flaggers should either be orange or this lime green color. Those are the two colors that you should be using. Okay. Now this one is a different color. It does need a bath, I'll admit. It needs to be cleaned, but it's an alternative color. And I have to admit, I would probably not use this one until I gave it a bath, but these things are machine washable. Okay. But why would I like this color versus orange? Why would this color actually be a good one for your flaggers versus the orange? Anybody want to guess that one in the Q&A for me? See if everybody gets this one while I put on one other item.
Yellow is brighter.
Yellow is brighter. The real brightness comes from the stripes, the retroreflective stripes that actually send the light right back to you. You'd be amazed how much it has. Watch, our friend Nick is going to shine a flashlight on me. We'll talk about this vest in a minute. Does that actually show up there a little bit, Adam?
Yes, and a second answer did come in that said more reflective.
If the reflective is some of it, one of the reasons is it's actually good. We recommend the flagger wear a different color than the rest of the crew. And a lot of times the crews are rounded by barrels that are orange and cones that are orange. Flagger wearing a different color, it's actually easier to see them. Now, I'm wearing a vest. It's a little small, isn't it? It's a little snug. You don't want that. It's a little too tight. This vest is really for someone who is smaller. Until last year, this vest would not have met the standard. It was too small. You had to have a certain amount of this retroreflective stripes. They've changed the standard, and I actually like this change, so that if you were smaller, okay, you can wear a smaller vest. You don't have to wear one you're swimming in. Though Someone my size, this vest just isn't big enough. You really need to get a bigger vest. It will still say the ANSI level on it, okay? But you want to make sure you've got a good vest. In fact, one of the things we're going to be doing over the summer ourselves is getting rid of most of our older equipment because they do break down over time. They degrade. This hard hat, it has a limited life to it, okay? And the way you can find that, by the way, on any hard hat is look on the inside of the lid, and then you can find the date when it was made, and you should replace them 2 years after that or 2 years after you take them to the field, whichever luckily is later if you store these things in the dark. You store them outside, you're going to have a problem. So 5 years is the maximum in any case. So just be aware, replace them more often than you think. That's the big thing. What you don't want to find out the hard way is this thing has become brittle and no longer does the job. They actually fail by bending a little bit before they break. Okay, and make sure the harness is good and all that. Okay, now I'm going to show you something else. This is a raincoat. This is allowed too, of course. On a rainy day like today, it was raining when I walked in, you're going to want the sleeves and the arms to stay dry. You may even want rain pants, okay? I just washed these, so they're actually nice and clean, okay? The advantage of this, if you've got the pants and the jacket together, is now you're meeting level 3, which you need at night. And more importantly, you see the whole body movement. You see the arm, you see the hand. People driving can actually detect that you're a flagger better off. So wear that. So we're not done yet with your equipment. We're getting close. What else do I need? What else is in my flagger set of equipment? See if anybody else can tell me what else is in the flagger set of equipment. It's about 3 things left on our list.
Flag.
The
Glove.
flag. Now, of course, a lot of people, they want to use this flag here. Okay, you'll see this all the time when you're traveling. Okay, this flag has 3 major problems. It's big enough, you know, the size is 24 inches. It's big enough. But what's wrong with this particular flag? See if anybody can get this one.
No wording.
No what?
No wording and
No,
color.
no. The flag is used as an emergency or a secondary device. Doesn't have any wording on it. It's just a single color, but the color matters. Nobody really knows what this orange means. This is really designed to be put as a tool to make things bright on existing signage. The color is wrong. Shouldn't be orange. The color should be red. Red is the color for the flag if you're going to be using the flag at all. And we'll talk about when and how you should be using the flag, but the color of the flag is important because red, at least closely says stop. It comes from the old railroads where they would actually use flags and they would slow traffic down, okay, with a red flag. So the color should be red and the size should be 24 inches. But I'm gonna go off screen here. And I know this is going to be too high out of screen. This is your primary tool, okay? This is the stop slow paddle. One side says slow and the other side said stop. And it's real important that that shape is an octagon, okay? Now the minimum height for the bottom of this octagon is 5 feet. We actually recommend, we actually like the 6-foot sign. The higher is a little bit better. It is a little windier in the wind, but we like this bigger size and bigger paddle. The minimum on this is 18 inches. This is a 2-footer. It's bigger, it's easier to see, and it does a better job communicating with the public. The public knows what a stop sign is, okay? Now for the rest of this talk, just because it'll be out of screen otherwise, I'm gonna move my paddle out of the way. And I'm going to go with my little demo paddle that I just fits on screen well. We can use it to illustrate things. When you're doing training and you're working with your staff, we actually recommend make some of these up. They're easy. It's just a piece of PVC with a sign, and this doesn't have to be metal. It could be even cardboard would work. I've seen folks do it with cardboard or plastic, but it's nice to have as a practice before you get out into the roadway. So this is what we're going to use. Okay, so we've got our vest or coat, we've got our hard hats or some kind of hat, we've got our stop slow paddle. I got two more things which you got to have in your flagger kit. Okay. We talk about it sometimes, and in the little handbook, we actually talk about a air horn. I actually like a whistle. Now, why do I like a whistle? Well, I hate to do this. Nick, you ready? You can hear this inside of a piece of equipment running at full bore, even an old noisy truck that doesn't meet the noise spec anymore. You can actually hear this. The goal of this tool is to alert your coworkers there's somebody coming through the work zone. Okay. Don't try to stand in front of the car. Get out of the way of the car. That's when you stand off to the side. But if they go by you, you blow this whistle. Okay. So you're almost done. Got two more things for you. When you're putting up a work zone, you're going to have advanced signage. And we're going to talk about that advanced signage in just a second. But this sign is yours. You're the flagger. This sign is the one you're going to take care of just before you get going, and you're going to take it down first at the end of the day. Now, what are you going to attach it to? Some kind of stand. Now, this is an older stand, I'll admit. It's the one we own. We actually do out and do some work. They make ones that are even faster to put up than this one. But boy, they don't take very long. And you just stick this on. And that's your sign. That goes with you. Now, how far in front of you should this sign be? Depends on your speed on your roadway. If you have your pocket guide with you in your back pocket, there'll actually be a chart that will show you the distance of the advanced signage. And this sign depends on the speed. On a rural area, it would be 500 feet. In an urban area, it would be 100 to 350 feet. Depends on the speed people are actually traveling. Okay, but this is your sign. So essentially all the signs get put up. And then this sign is the last one that gets turned. And then you start the flagging operation. This is part of your toolkit. Okay, so keep that in mind as we're talking about this. Now I'm going to move this out of the way. So it'll probably be off screen, at least I hope it is. Get it off screen? Perfect. Okay. That is part of your thing. We're going to recommend one other thing for you. I actually like this trick. For anytime you've got a flagger station, this to me is one of your tools. Okay. You're going to have all the cones that go with the work zone to set up the work zone, to find the work zone. We're going to draw on our screen here, a little work zone here in just a second. But I actually like having one cone with the flagger. Okay. That does a couple of things. First off, that cone goes right on the edge line of the roadway or even just a little bit into it. And you move it with you if you have to move. Okay. And the reason you do that is it gives a secondary visual and it gives you a place to sort of remind yourself, hey, this is at the edge of the road. I'm going to stand outside of it so I don't hurt myself. Okay. I've seen folks carry 3 cones and define a flagger station, but minimum of 1 cone, something you can move. It's actually a pretty cool idea. It's really easy to do and helps you be seen and helps you keep yourself safe. Okay, so that's your toolkit of equipment. I'm going to move the cone out of the way temporarily. Okay, I'll bring the cone back in just a minute. What other things have I not talked about that we probably should have in our toolkit for the day if I'm flagging traffic? What else? See what you come up with, Adam. See if anybody puts anything in the Q&A.
Water bottle.
A water bottle, say maybe some food, okay? I mean, I joke, this is my coffee for the morning, but some kind of liquid is really important. It's part of your day. You're gonna be out there for 8 hours sometimes, maybe longer if you're doing a job that goes from sunrise to sunset. So you wanna have liquid, you wanna have food, you wanna stay hydrated. That's actually pretty important, okay? So you gotta make sure you've done that. What else?
Radio to talk to other flaggers. Shift plan on who works when so they do not get fatigued.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's go down those a couple of things. So what was the first one, Adam?
I'm sorry, radio to talk to other flaggers.
Let's talk about communicating with the other flaggers. It's on my list further down, but I'm a believer in the idea of let's talk about your questions when you've got them. How do you communicate with the other flaggers? There's 4 or 5 ways people do that. In a small short work zone, like you've got in a village or a city, the most common way we communicate is this hat. Whether it's a hard hat or just a soft baseball cap, this is a communication tool. It's a way for you to communicate with your fellow flagger, your partner. Okay, so I've got my little stop slow paddle. This is part of the communication tool as well, by the way, when you got 2 people, okay? Because if you're the other flagger and I'm communicating with you, both of these signs should be facing in the same direction, stopping all traffic, for instance, in this particular case. So if you've got the stop sign facing them, they know they should be stopping traffic coming towards this direction. When they turn the stop, now you see slow, guess what? You now know you can release your traffic because you've got things stopped. But this hat acts as a secondary communication tool because essentially you say, I've made a change. You pick your hat up, you put it back down, and your partner replies, I see you. Pick the hat up, put it back down. It's just an acknowledgement that you're signaling back and forth. So that's one way. No radio needed, just a communication. You got to have sight lines. That's not always possible. So in that case, we're going to have a radio. Cell phones are sometimes used, okay? The one thing I will tell you is if you were going to go with a radio system and you're going to have something with the ear, never do both ears. One ear at most. So something in one ear is okay, over the head or behind the head, because you don't want this that covers one ear, not the other. You don't want to cover both ears, okay? There are devices out there. If you watched the highway school a couple of weeks ago, we were out at a site in Alfred State where they actually had an over-the-head headset that was also hearing protection, which some job sites you might want the hearing protection. Those particular headsets actually have a microphone in them, specifically so they can hear the ambient noise around them. That's key. You want to have an ear so you can hear vehicles. You want to have an ear so you can hear the equipment. Don't cover up both ears. That's one of the reasons why we really say never be listening to music. Don't be listening to something else. Pay attention, okay? And then other ways you could communicate, you can have a pilot vehicle that can go in a long work zone back and forth where you talk about something. But you're right, the most common methods are essentially just the simple communication of your paddle and your hat or a radio of some type. And of course, cell phones count as that as well. What was the second item, Adam?
A shift plan on who works when so they do not get fatigued.
You don't get fatigued. Well, there's a second thing other than fatigue too that we have to deal with, but you want to give people breaks. That's absolutely key. How long can you stand there? Okay, which leads to the piece of equipment we hadn't talked about, but I think maybe just as important as anything else. When I first started working in Yates County, I was on a construction site, we were paving, and I had a couple of flaggers at each end. They'd been doing it for 20 years. And they told me the single most important piece of equipment for a good flagger wasn't the vest, wasn't the hard hat, wasn't even the paddle. It was their shoes. You want good shoes you can stand in for hours, okay? Don't get something cheap, spend the money, get good quality shoes. And if you're out there in the winter, make sure you're wearing the proper kind of Kevlar. That's not the steel toes, they get real cold. So make sure you've checked your shoes, they're in good shape. If they're old and beat up, your feet are gonna hurt at the end of the day. Get inserts, they're cheap, they're worth it, okay? I've gone through in the last year with COVID, I walk every morning on these shoes. Well, actually not these shoes, they've already been replaced. You're probably going to need to get a new pair of shoes or boots twice a year in some cases, depending on how good of shoes you buy. So don't go cheap. Shoes are part of your equipment set. Okay. Now, you got good shoes. You need steel toe or Kevlar. That's again a policy decision. If you're only flagging, you might not need them. But if you ever have a situation where you're going to be on the job site, you're going to need those steel toe or Kevlar toed shoes. But I will tell you in the winter, I prefer the Kevlar toed myself. They don't get as cold. Okay. Is there anything else that people have come up with for ideas? It was the break.
Not at
Let's
this
talk
time.
about that break. Anything else, Adam?
No, not at this time.
Okay. The break is key. How long can you stand there doing traffic? I mean, let's be honest, in some places it's pretty boring. There's not a lot of traffic. You can go a little bit longer maybe, but eventually your body is going to need a break. So you're going to have a break. Is it an hour? Is it 90 minutes? Never more than 90. You really want to give people a break on a reasonable basis. 5 or 10 minutes so they can do what Mother Nature says they got to do and just to relax a little bit. It's really key. So who's going to replace them? Do you have a backup flagger? Or is it the supervisor who's coming over to take over? Okay. That's a very important thing. And it also leads to something we forget about sometimes. If you're the crew supervisor and you're going to relieve that flagger for even 5 minutes, you better know how to flag yourself. And not because what you've done 10 years ago, you need to be able to flag traffic. So you need to understand the signals. You need to be as good a flagger as the person you're replacing. So don't assume, practice just like anybody else, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the signals. We're going to start with the ones for the paddle, and then I will show you the ones with the flag and a couple of other special situations. So the starting point is we're going to show up on our job site. So here's our work zone. Okay, let me find, I'm going to pick a color. Oh, how about today's color? I don't like red. Green? Green good? Go with green. So let's say we're doing some work here. We could be replacing a manhole in an urban area. We could be doing a box out patch, okay? But we're going to assume it's a static work zone, okay? Now in that static work zone, order matters. You can't just put the crew out there and start digging, okay? And as the flagger, you're part of that operation. One of the first things that happens is the first thing you're going to do, you're going to put up, the very first thing is the road work ahead sign or the road work ahead symbol. That's the first thing that goes up. So that's the very first sign that goes up. Okay, that's the first thing that goes up on both sides. We put those two signs up, okay? Okay. So is there a comment there, Adam?
A comment of no cell phones as a flagger.
Yeah, you should not be using a cell phone as a flagger. I've seen companies who will give people a cell phone to use as a flagger to communicate, but the risk, of course, is people want to use that cell phone for other than just work. Better to use a radio setup. By the way, in the long run, they're probably cheaper because you're not paying for the service. It's just a radio frequency. As long as you're close, you can hear each other. But yeah, don't use a cell phone because people's temptation is too great. Yeah, I agree with that. So road work ahead goes up first. Haven't got work yet. So we're going to work here eventually, but there's nobody in the road. Don't get in the road yet. The next sign that goes up is the sign that tells people something's happening. So most commonly, 1 lane road ahead. A lot of people like to use right lane closed ahead. 1 lane road ahead because it's universal. Whether you close in the right lane or the left lane, it doesn't really matter. So you put up the 1 lane road ahead sign next. Okay. And then finally that flagger sign, the flagger symbol sign. All 3 signs go up. Then you put the flaggers on site. I didn't do a very good job here, so I'm going to cheat. You put the flagger here. You got your two flaggers. Okay. Now, obviously, it's a little hard to see them, so I'll put a big arrow. Okay. And that's where that cone comes in real valuable. And those cones are up first. As soon as that is done, you can actually go ahead and start controlling traffic. The rest of the crew then quickly goes in and puts in the cones. Okay. I know you can't see the dots. Now you can't see the dots. They're way too small, but I'm going to draw a solid line. Imagine they're cones, and I'll show you why that works in a minute. You're going to have all your cones in, then you can start working. So when the flaggers start is before everything is put up. Now you're thinking, hey, a bunch of cones are not solid. Let me show you something. I got some mini cones here. The minimum number of cones in this initial taper, this transition where you're going to move traffic out of the lane into the other lane, the minimum number of cones is 6. Okay. So I've got 6 cones. Scale wise, this is about right. Of course, my cones don't want to let go right now. And of course, I grabbed 7 because I can't count. But imagine 6 cones. I know I'm out of screen, but I have a rolling cart. So imagine you've got 6 cones. To a driver, remember those cones are 28 inches tall or taller. That acts like a wall. So when you've got your transition of cones, this acts like a wall, a barrier, and it serves 2 purposes. Not only does it help move the traffic out of the way and act as a barrier, but when somebody goes by you as a flagger, and like it or not, they will do it, what are they going to do next? They're going to hit the cones. So if nothing else, maybe hitting the cones will wake them up and slow them down because they are on their cell phones that they shouldn't be on. Okay. Now, one of the things we don't do enough, I wish we did it more, is you've got your transition here between the cones and the actual work. This is called the buffer space. Now, the buffer space, we never do enough buffer. There's a reason for that buffer space. So Adam, you want to go ahead and show that buffer video?
Yep, I'll put it up in just a second.
He's going to bring up a video. This is from an interstate, yeah, so it's higher speed. And with a crash truck, because you definitely want a crash truck on the interstate system. Watch what happens when the vehicle. Is it playing now?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Is he done?
Still a few seconds left.
Yep, that's good. That's good enough. You can stop that and come back over here. The key is you want that buffer space. It's really important. There's a temptation. We've got this big open space to put equipment in there. But imagine if instead of being a car with a crash truck, that had been you getting something from the pickup that you had parked there, or you're standing in front of that pickup when it gets struck. Okay, so that buffer space is pretty important. And as a flagger, point that out, remind people, hey, I'm here to protect you as the crew. We need to keep that space empty. And I've come across too many sites where guess who pulls into that buffer space? The crew supervisor. Oh, it's empty, it's open. No, 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 no. Better yet, go downstream. Give yourself a little extra space downstream. And that's where you can bring your vehicles in and out. And that's where you can park if you need to go visit a site. Don't go put anything in the buffer space. And if you're wondering the distances, they're given either in here or in those, better yet, this work zone pocket guide, which gives both urban and rural situations. Okay, so let's go back to our signals. We've got our signs up, we've got our cones up. General rule of thumb, first signal that's put when you have two flaggers, you stop traffic in both directions. Okay, so we stop traffic in both directions. We don't want to get ourselves around the corner. So if there's a hill here, we may have to move where the flagger is standing. Okay. But we stop the traffic. We want to be able to see each other. In this case, we may not be able to because you got a work zone in the way. So you may have to move or you have to have radios. But let's assume we can see each other because I don't want to be doing a radio and I don't have a second person. I'll stop traffic. We're going to start normally releasing one or the other. Usually that's with the lead flagger. And is the lead flagger, the more critical flagger, the one with the open lane or the one with the closed lane? That's a decision you can make. We normally like to see, obviously, the person who's got the closed lane is the lead. But you can do it either way. You normally then are going to start by keeping the traffic going through the open lane, stopping this traffic here that's coming into the closed lane. And to do that, you just hold up a stop and you hold up a hand, just like you would see a police officer do. Okay, I'll not get my hand in front of my face, but that's okay. Stop. If they're coming up to you too quickly, slow them down, get their hand going, wave the paddle a little bit. You'd be amazed how effective it is. You don't need to be standing in the lane. Okay, now I will admit, more than a few times they go right by you. You need to be looking at them. And if you have to, you can drop that into their vehicle. Okay, but don't stand in front of them, please. More than anything else, I see that. So now we got them stopped. We've stopped the vehicle. Get eye contact with them. Make sure they see you. Nod with them if possible. Okay. Now you're going to release traffic. The person who is at the other side of the work zone first stops their traffic. And you're glancing back, primarily looking at the traffic. You're glancing back to your partner or you're listening on the radio if you've got radio headsets. And they give the signal that, okay, something's about to change. They raise their hat. The person at the other end turns to stop the traffic. You still got your traffic in front of you. You see they've stopped. They've given you the signal that everybody is set and stopped. So then you turn to slow. Give that person a hand signal. If you're changing lanes, push them over. Bring your hand over, push them over into the other lane. If it's the open lane up here, just bring your hand along your side. Simple hand signals, please use your hand. Okay, think of the royal wave. You hear the joke about the royal wave, the big hand. It's really good. Don't use a finger. I'll let you imagine why you don't want to use a finger. Okay, always use the whole hand and it's easier to see. Okay, now some people like to use gloves. And in the winter, they can keep your hand warm. They actually make gloves that are orange. Okay, but again, just use the whole glove. Use the whole hand. Okay. Now, you've got everything open. Somebody's coming up to you too fast. Open lane or closed, doesn't really matter. Just slow them down. Use big hand signals. Now, why is this important? These are little scale models of a stop slow paddle and a red flag. When you first see that flagger, if they're stationed properly, if you are the flagger, what the driver sees is something about like this. Imagine how small that is on your screen. Okay? It's too teeny. Okay? Waving it isn't going to do any good. They're not really going to see that waving. All they're going to see is the red. All they're going to see is the octagon or the slow if it's a slow side. That's why big slow signals work better. And that's why this octagon is really valuable, because when they first see it, it's really tiny. When you want them to react, it's really tiny. Okay, so keep that in mind. Keep your signals slow and steady. Okay, and of course, if somebody goes by you, you can always blow your whistle. I'll be nice to Nick here in the lab and not blow it again. I like these, by the way, because they work in the foulest weather possible. They'd work in the rain. So, okay. Now, let me just go over the quickly with the.
David,
Wow.
we've got a
Yes, Adam?
Can you hear me? We've
Sure.
got a question comment that's come in. Required distance between cones and length of blocked off area.
For the details on cone spacing, we really recommend the Work Zone Pocket Guide. We also have an app on our website that you can actually download to your smartphone, and you can actually design a red work zone. Oh, we're using my cell phone as the camera. I can't show it to you. We have an app that will actually do the calculations for you for work zones, but in here it does the cone spacing. Okay, and at the beginning you could open it up, and it will give you the number of channelizing devices, i.e. cones. You could use barrels, but most people use cones. Minimum of 6 for the taper. And then the spacing depends upon how long is the work zone, okay? So once every 50 feet is the typical rule of thumb. So you need 1 cone every 50 feet along, but you need 6 for your initial taper wall. And then you can just use that math. So if you had a 300-foot work zone, 300 divided by 50, okay, that would be 6. You need 1 at each end, so that's an extra 1, so that'd be 7. Or better yet, there's a table right in here. You don't even have to do the calculations, okay? So 50-foot spacing typically for the work zone. More isn't going to hurt you, but that's the minimum, okay? Now, the flag, there's 2 times to use the flag. One is almost everybody should have one of these in their pickup, okay? So in an emergency, you come across a crash scene, you come across an incident, you need to stop traffic, you grab the flag and you put it out. And the stop is just holding the flag out with your hand up, stop. You need to sort of get people's attention, big, slow movements with the hand continuing to be up, okay? And to release traffic, you put the flag behind you so you can't see it, and you wave the traffic through. Now, some people think you can do this with one person. It's really hard to do one person with the flag because now you're stopping traffic in both directions. Because you can't really hide the flag too well, because that's theoretically what you're supposed to do. I really like the stop slow battle better. One place that is useful to have the flag, though, is in an urban situation. You're doing a city or paving, you got intersections and driveways, you can use the flag to help slow people down, okay? But you can actually use the stop slow to do similar things, okay? But the flag is really an emergency device until you can get the paddle in place, okay? So keep that in mind. It's a useful tool. You'll have it in your kit, but the flag, and by the way, this flag actually doesn't technically meet the spec. What's wrong with this flag? It's big enough, it's the right color, but what's wrong with it? I'll give you a hint. It should be weighted in the wind. Imagine in the wind what this would look like, okay? We actually like it. If you'll take this piece of dowel that you've got here, you take the wooden dowel that it comes with, just make a copy of it, stick it down the end, staple it, and now you've got something you can hold on to, even if it's a windy day, and it will stay up pretty well in the wind. And when you roll it up, it doesn't take up that much extra space, okay? Let's see, what else do I want to make sure we covered? We talked about, one flagger versus 2. There's a temptation. I know of us, a lot of us have very small budgets. We don't want to put a lot of time and effort. We want to do it with 1 flagger, okay? There's some limitations on when you should be using 1 flagger versus 2. When is it okay to only have one flagger? What are the conditions you need to have? See if people come up with an answer for you, Adam. There's 3 or 4 times when you can get away with only having one flagger.
One-way road.
A one-way road, yeah. A lot of times on a one-way road, and that's actually a special situation. Sometimes you've only got traffic coming in one direction. It's a one-way street, and you could just have one flagger. They would stand here in the same spot. Yeah. Okay. But a lot of times, obviously, if it's a one-lane road and you've got room to get around them, you don't even need a flagger. You just transition them over. And you could actually do a lane merging symbol then in that case. What else?
Shoulder work or ditching.
Shoulder work, if you're off the shoulder and the only reason you need a flagger is just to help get trucks back out into the roadway. Yeah. And in that case, most of the time, the flagger is actually standing there with their stop slow paddle facing like this. They don't even have the slow up. Okay. They're just watching traffic. And then when they see somebody, they first go to slow. And then they go to stop. Sort of like a yellow-red type of situation. Get the truck out into the roadway, get them out of the way, and then release the traffic. Okay. But a lot of times we're replacing a catch basin, or we're doing some other kind of small patchwork. And we want to get in here, we want to get away with only one flagger. It can be done, but there's really 3 things you got to be aware of. Number 1, the flagger, the location for the flagger is on the opposite side of the road from the work zone. They're standing actually over here. And they can only do this in relatively slow speed situations. You should be doing it in villages, a hamlet, speed limits 30 miles an hour or less. Anything faster than that, and the risk is just too great. Remember that 40 mile an hour can get you killed. You and I both know if there's speed limits above 30, they're probably going a lot faster than that. So low speed, low volume. What that volume is, 400 would be a good rule of thumb. Can you cheat a little bit? Depends on the situation, but don't cheat too much. But here's the 3rd thing. It's not written down anywhere, but we think it's pretty important. This work zone needs to be relatively small because I put an arrow here, but the reality is you cannot stand still doing one-person flagging. You need to be moving back and forth. So when you're stopping traffic coming to the closed lane, you actually need to be, I'm purposely going to use a different color, standing at the end of the work zone. So you walk to the one end with your stop sign up, because they're actually having to look in an odd location. They're looking across the street. So the closer you can get to them, the better. Then when you get ready to release them, you've got to give them good hand signals, let them go, and then walk to the other end to stop that traffic. So you need to walk down, back and forth. So that work zone needs to be pretty small, including the buffer space. If it's more than 100, 150 feet, it's probably too hard for you to control that traffic. Okay. So one person can work in low volume, low speed, but you're really going to be someone who can walk a lot, move back and forth. So I see there's some comments, Adam.
Yes. First on the one-person flagging, brush pickup or blocking a lane for only 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay, so brush pickup. This is actually one of those special situations. It's almost what they call mobile work. Patching is another one that you'll see like this. In this case, you're having to move quite a bit. In that particular case, you're actually probably going to put the signs way up. You may want that middle sign to actually say, have a speed distance under it. So a half mile ahead or something. Not always done, but more importantly, it's a moving operation. And in that particular case, you still want the advanced signage, and that flagger needs to be moving. And they may need to move the actual flagger sign. So this first 2 might stay still, but this one may move down the road, or you might want to have a following vehicle, crash vehicle. You still want the advanced signage. You don't use flaggers in that situation. You can stop traffic for 3 to 5 minutes. Again, reasonable delay. Okay. One thing that can help there, by the way, is reverse 911 to let people know you're working on a particular road. That can be very, very helpful. Okay. What else you got?
All trucks should have their lights operating properly and flashing in any work.
Exactly. That's absolutely key. One of the things, whatever equipment you've got in the work zone should have its proper lights, amber lights. The state's actually got some pretty good stuff on how they've lit their trucks up. It can be very helpful. Make sure all the lights are working. The lights are flashing like they should be flashing. But that reminds me of something that's on near the bottom of my list. The flagger should not be standing near all that equipment. The flagger should be standing away from it, because otherwise they get lost. Even with a different color, they're going to get lost in the shuffle. So you want to be standing in a different place, which is, again, one of the reasons I like to have this cone. This is my piece of equipment. It says, here's where I'm standing, okay? Which is why it's really hard to do with one flagger, dual flagger. What's the third one there, Adam?
Nope, that's all we had.
That's all we got, okay. Let's see, what else have I got? A couple of other things. We talked about, okay, long work zones. That's a pretty important one with a long work zone. You know, you're paving, you're doing a chip seal operation, and you may be stopping traffic and they're driving through a mile or 2 miles sometimes of work. First off, try to keep those relatively short. I know the temptation is to make a nice long work zone. Keep them short as you possibly can. But if you have to, do what you have to do. In those particular situations, you're going to obviously have to have a radio, okay, to communicate with the flaggers. And you may want a pilot vehicle to say, hey, the last vehicle in the thing is a pilot vehicle, or you follow the pilot vehicle through and you communicate back and forth. So that's pretty important, okay? The other one is at nighttime. At nighttime, you really should have a lit station if you're working at night. But I know a lot of times, we'll be honest, you're working early in the morning or you're going late at night and you're not doing a lot. In that particular case, do me a favor. It's a minimum, get a truck and shine a light on the flagger. You really want that flagger wearing at least sleeves, preferably pants, if they're working in the dark. Okay, a lit station is actually recommended and required in some cases. And instead of using just your hand, you're going to be using a wand instead, because you can't really see the hand at night. So you're going to having a wand. Okay, so this is a pink wand, probably not going to show up real great on the screen. Okay, you can have an orange wand. Okay, I looked last night to try to find something that was definitive. Everybody sells the pink ones. I don't know that the orange ones aren't going to work, but their brightness matters. Okay. And of course, some of them make themselves really bright. You can see this even here in the lit room that we're in. Okay. So have that, make sure the batteries are good in it. And of course, you could start the day with the wand, and then once it gets bright enough, take the wand and put it away. Okay. So, I mean, Nick's reminding me we probably want one of these rechargeables, either the batteries or the flashlight itself. They'll make them rechargeable. Try to do that if you can. It's good for the environment, and in the long run, it's cheaper. I like that part too. Okay. Let's see. This one uses 3 batteries. Oh, you've had 3 batteries for this one in 20 years. That's pretty cool. This is one from Nick, okay, that he's got. Now, I will say, the only thing about this one I don't like, it's heavy. So think about the weight of these things, okay? That's a possibility. But this one's nice because with rechargeables, they can go for quite a while. Okay, there's some do's and don'ts. Yeah, we got about 5 minutes. There's 2 more things I want to make sure we cover. I got my mini flagger ahead sign. Remember, this is part of my kit. When you're taking a break, let's say we take a break and everybody gets out of the work zone. Do you need to take all the signs down? Actually, no, if you're going to be right back after lunch. But let's say you're shutting down for lunchtime and everybody's going to be out of the way like a chip seal or a paving operation. Not going to be any cones. You could leave the work zone ahead sign, but you probably should turn the 1 lane and the flagger symbol. Just turn them. Okay? You'd be amazed how effective that is. If you leave the work zone ahead, but turn the other 2 when you're not actually in the roadway, and make sure that before you start, you turn them back and get them in position, the public will actually pay attention a lot better. But if you leave that sign up, if that sign sits there for days and days and days, people learn to ignore it. So one of the more important things is to turn the signs, okay, when they're not being used. And then lastly, let me just see in the book. I'm going to pull the book back out. Read through the book. In the back of it, there's a bunch of do's and don'ts for flagging. If nothing else, go through that list of do's and don'ts. about where you should stand, about treating people courteously. If you're not sure, consult the book. We've made it a pocket guide that can sit in your back pocket. You can always refer to it and you go, boy, I can't remember the spacing on the sign. It's in there, okay? So if you're not sure, have the book with you, have the work zone book with you, keep them in the back pocket. You can always go from there. And then lastly, when you think you're ready, we actually have a tutorial on our website. It's a tutorial for flagging. It has some quiz questions with it. And when you think you're ready to flag or you want to send somebody out to flag, have them take the tutorial and see how they do. And if they can answer all the questions with no problem, probably ready to start flagging. Before you go out though, we actually recommend you practice. Put some cones in a parking lot and do a fake work zone with your crew acting as the trucks where they're walking. Pretty cool, okay? So we have a time for a couple of questions. So let's go through those. What questions do we have?
We have a comment, be careful in shaded areas in bright sun. Transition is sometimes a problem with visibility.
Yep, and that's actually listed in the do's and don'ts. Don't stand where you can't be seen. So stand where you can be. If it's a lot of shade, probably not an issue, but you're right, going from bright to dark can be very hard to see somebody. One thing I recommend folks do after the work zone is set up is the supervisor should drive the work zone with an eye as if they're the public to see, is there somebody not standing where they should be? You can always move further, okay? But make sure you can be seen. What else we got, Adam? Any more questions?
Nothing right now.
Nothing right now. Did we throw the tutorial in the chat?
We did early on.
We did. Okay. So again, if folks are interested with all of the stuff we've got here, they want to get copies of either the work zone or the Flagger Pocket Guide, just send us an email and we'd be glad to send it to us, to you. Just put in your address and who you work for so that we make sure we mail it to you and the price is right, just the cost of an email. You can do the web tutorial, you can download a smartphone app to help you with work zones, but flaggers are the most important person in a lot of ways on any work zone site. Make sure they're properly protected and they're protecting you. With that, Adam, I think we'll call it a day, unless there's any more questions in the comment field.
None right now.
None right now. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Have yourself a great day. Hopefully we'll see some of you tomorrow on our pavement design stuff, and we'll see you with next week's webinar. Take care.